And today's discussion is going to be focused on how to attract students using content marketing. And we have Melissa Suzuno here, who's our head of content at AfterCollege, and she's actually going to share best practices and some of the tips and some tips and tricks we use to leverage content marketing to get more students in AfterCollege. And we think this is going to be good, insightful information that's going to help you in your activities and your efforts and just getting better at college recruiting and attracting the right students. So we're pretty excited about that. A few items just in terms of how the webinar is going to work. So your lines are muted. We can see everyone who's logging in, and just because there's so many of you, we basically have muted the lines. And what we can do is what we've done is we've enabled it so that you can ask questions via chat, and then we're going to be moderating the questions here, and we're going to be reading off the questions and then answering those at the end of the webinar. And I believe we have an hour for this, so we're going to get through this as quickly as possible, but also allow you to ask questions. We'll stop if we see any sort of questions that are getting asked during the webinar, and then at the end we'll do as best we can to accommodate all the questions before the hour is up. We know your time is valuable, and we don't want to take up more of your time. However, we can always email out answers if we run out of time. So again, you're muted. We'll be talking on this side, and we'll make this as interactive as we can. And again, if you have any questions or anything comes up, just please type it in through the question or chat window on the GoToWebinar panel that you should see on your screen. Again, going to tell you a little bit about ourselves. My name is Roberto Angulo. I'm CEO and co-founder of AfterCollege, and my job pretty much here this morning is to introduce Melissa, who's our content expert, so I will pass it on to her shortly. I started AfterCollege when I was an undergrad majoring in economics at Stanford, and I'll describe sort of why we started AfterCollege, what the need was and what the need is today with college students, and what we're doing with them. And again, the goal is to make this more about you and how we can help you as opposed to about us. So again, I'm Roberto, CEO and co-founder of AfterCollege, and I'll let Melissa introduce herself briefly.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. My name is Melissa Suzuno. I'm the content marketing manager here at AfterCollege, and I've been here since February 2013. I've worked as a writer and editor for about 10 years, and I've written everything from magazine articles and web copy to podcasts and textbooks. And here at AfterCollege, I manage our content marketing team, and one of my primary duties is managing the employer blog, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So I'll let Roberto talk to you a little bit more about AfterCollege and what we do.
So AfterCollege, what are we? We're the largest career network for college students and recent grads. Our mission is to help students and recent grads find their first job or internship by connecting them with employers. Specifically, what we're doing for students is helping them identify the right opportunities. On the employer side, what we're doing is we're helping employers target specific subsets of candidates within universities, whether it be by major, degree, specific skill sets, and that's what we've been doing since we started AfterCollege. We founded the company in '99, so we've been around for quite a bit. We're using data analytics and machine learning to make really relevant job and internship recommendations to college students, and we're working with employers to do the same on the reverse. So on the employer side, typically employers say, hey, can you help us target electrical engineering students at these schools, or on the healthcare side, we'll get asked, can you help us target nursing students on this side of the country on the West Coast, and that's what we do. So our job is in connecting both students and employers. In terms of reach, we have roughly 5 million students and recent grads who are using our site every year. We have about 18,000 academic contacts and faculty collaborators at over 2,300 universities nationwide, that's in the US, that spread the word about AfterCollege to their students. In terms of employer usage, at any given point, we'll have 200,000 plus entry-level jobs and internships on our system from roughly 25,000 different employers. And the pain point we're serving for students is helping them discover the right opportunities. So as we all know, there's a lot of great resources out there to help students find jobs and internships. A lot of these resources require that the student know what to type in the search box, and it's great if you know what to search for. But the problem that I had when I was a student, and the problem students have right now, is a lot of people just don't know what's out there, and that actually dovetails into why we started AfterCollege. So as I mentioned, I was studying economics as an undergrad at Stanford, and I had no clue what I wanted to do at all. I knew I didn't want to wear a suit, and I knew I couldn't code in Java. So a lot of the opportunities that were presented to us were from good companies, but mainstream companies that were doing a lot of on-campus recruiting. As students, we really benefited from discovering opportunities that were coming in from our student groups and from our professors, and that sort of gave us the idea to start the company. So again, job discovery, career discovery is what we do on the student side, and that's what positions us as experts in being able to basically give you tips that could hopefully help you in just attracting the right students at the right time. So that's enough about AfterCollege. From here, we're going to talk about content marketing, and I'll let Melissa talk about what content marketing is, and then we're going to talk about how that pertains to university recruiting and how you can leverage it.
So first of all, I just wanted to talk a little bit about where we got the information that we'll be presenting in today's webinar. The information came from a bunch of different sources. I conducted a lot of interviews with leading university recruiting professionals at companies like Salesforce, NetApp, Booz Allen Hamilton, Enterprise, and Ernst & Young, to name just a few. I've also done interviews with employer branding experts like Mary Scott of Scott Resource Group, Jeff Goodman of Campus Strategic Partners, and Tracy Parsons of CredHive. And we also have AfterCollege business examples with companies like Intel, Airbnb, and the NSA. And I've also conducted informational interviews with seasoned content marketers at companies like Zendesk, Vertical Response, and Salesforce. And I attended the Copyblogger Authority Intensive and Content Marketing World Conferences for content marketing professionals. And I also went to the NACE conference in San Antonio this past June to learn more about the specific issues affecting university recruiters. What will we be talking about today? Using content marketing to build your brand and attract more students. We have a diverse group on the phone here today. Some of you may not have ventured into university recruiting, some of you may be established university recruiters, and some of you may fall somewhere in between. But the basics of content marketing in a UR context are applicable to everyone. We'll be breaking the information down into several parts. So you can see we're going to talk about what is content marketing, why should university recruiters care about content marketing. We'll look at some specific examples of content marketing in a university recruiting context. And we'll talk about how you can get started with limited resources. And again, for those of you who just joined us, we'll be taking questions through the questions function on GoToWebinar at the end of the presentation. Content marketing is an increasingly important part of a comprehensive university recruiting strategy. Those that do it best commit to creating high-quality content, understand the necessity of building a brand, and believe in the importance of telling the type of stories that student job seekers want to hear. Let's start simply. What exactly do we mean when we say content? Some common examples of content are things like blog posts, videos, infographics, ebooks, webinars, and podcasts. The basic concept of content marketing is to use these assets to solve a problem or address a pain point your prospective customer is facing. The primary goals of any content you create should be to educate and entertain. Educating is an important goal because you need to establish trust, and entertaining is essential because no one has to pay attention to you. You need to earn attention. As a university recruiter / content marketer, you want to put yourself in the shoes of the college student or recent grad job seeker. What kinds of questions does he or she have about applying to or working for your company? How can you be a part of the answer when they go to find out? And how can you make your answer compelling enough that they want to stick around and learn more? So I want to take a moment to talk about what content marketing is not. Content marketing is not an immediate sales pitch and not just a vehicle for you to blatantly self-promote. Remember, you want to establish yourself as a trusted and respected authority and help people address their pain points. You want to build trust and establish respect in your brand over time so that when it comes time for your prospective customer, in your case, the job seeker, to make a decision, your name comes to mind as a trusted authority. It may take some work to get everyone on board, but content marketing is not about selling something. The idea is that the more you give away for free, the more you establish yourself as someone who's worth listening to. Now, we could do a whole webinar on using social media in your university recruiting program, and there's a lot of overlap between content marketing and social media, but I wanted to take a moment to kind of distinguish between the two. The lines can get a little blurred between content marketing and social media, but here's a simple rule of thumb. Social media is a great tool for widening the reach of your content marketing and repurposing some of your content, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But there's more to content marketing than just maintaining a company account on a social media platform like Facebook or Pinterest. A good way to start is by spending some time observing and experimenting with different social media platforms, but you'll almost certainly want your content to be available on your company's own blog or website. This is partly for search engine optimization, which is basically a fancy way of saying that you show up in people's Google search results, but also because anytime you post on a social media platform, you can't control what happens to that content in the future. If one day Facebook or Twitter or Pinterest went under, or they drastically changed their terms of use, you might find that you no longer had the following or the content that you'd worked so hard to create. Think of social media as a way to amplify and share your content marketing efforts, but ultimately you'll probably want to be directing people back to your company website.
So many of you know, and I'm sure most of you have this dilemma where you're basically going on campus, and I know some of you do a lot of planning and do a lot of brand building prior to going on campus, but we also hear a lot of examples where companies have basically stopped participating in campus recruiting activities, and they show up on campus at a job fair. And I'll give you an example. So one of the employers we work with, basically they do campus recruiting on and off, and they change their school targets fairly often. What ends up happening, in one case, they showed up at a job fair, and this is a company that's a leader in what they do. But nobody knows about it. So they showed up on campus, and they had a booth at a career fair, and they had one or two students showing up at the booth. The example they gave is they had another company, well-known company, Tesla Motors next to them, and they had just a line out the door, right? So this is a company that has not done a lot of active brand building on campus, and the other one doesn't have to because their brand is pretty synonymous with their employer brand. Everyone wants to go work for Tesla because they're basically making cool cars, and they're basically creating technology that's going to save the environment. So that's pretty powerful, right? So what can you do, right? When you're competing with companies like these, how do you build a brand? And you can't be on campus all the time, and you can't be at all your target campuses, right? So content marketing is one thing that you can do to get your name out and be top of mind with students while you're not on campus. And as a university recruiter, you have to wear two hats, right? So on one hand, the exec team is saying, well, I went to Berkeley and I studied EE, therefore you need to help get Berkeley EE students as interns this summer, and we need 50 of them, right? It's an extreme example. So on one hand, you're filling headcount, and you're basically trying to get these interns or full-time hires from the target campuses that either you've chosen, which is probably better, or that have been handed down, which is typically problematic if you haven't been doing any brand building, right? So you're having to fulfill these short-term needs as a recruiter, and then on the other hand, you need to basically act as a marketer and start investing in the long term, right? So when you have budget that's dedicated to the short-term initiative and time, you need to split that between the short-term initiatives and the long-term initiatives. And content marketing is a way to basically help get you traction. So when you show up on campus, you basically have students that already know about you. And again, content marketing is a very powerful tactic that you can use while you're not on campus that's going to help you build a brand. So again, and brand's important because you want students knowing about you when you show up. And it's your employer brand and not just your company brand. So content marketing is a way to help you. And we know a lot of the big employers that are targeting college students or they're recruiting on campus, they're starting early, as early as freshman year. So you may not have opportunities, you may not have recs, right? You may not have internships or any open positions, but yet you need to start early and start getting in these students' radar early on. And it might be 300, 400 days before you actually have anything meaningful to offer them. But by that time, you want to be already on their radar, and you want these students to know about you. And that's where content marketing comes in.
So I just wanted to add one thing to what Roberto was just talking about branding and how students find out about you and all of that kind of that's a really important part of content marketing in the university recruiting context. And it's just the way that things work these days that anytime we have a question, we turn to the internet to answer it. And students will be searching online for information about your company and your work and your culture, and your application process. So it just makes sense for you to be a part of that conversation, and content marketing allows you to do that. I have a quote that I wanted to read from Tracy Parsons, she's the CEO of CredHive and one of the people I conducted an interview with about employer branding. And she says, "Content marketing helps candidates select themselves in and out based on the content that is shared. Content marketing can save recruiters time because it can pre-educate candidates prior to application, let alone interview." So I think this quote is great because it just, it talks about how it's a time-saving tool for a recruiter, and we know recruiters are busy. You have a lot on your plate. So any way that you can save yourself time and energy, I mean, that's wonderful. And we, in our interview with her, by the way, this interview was on the employer blog, and we'll be sharing the link for that later if you're interested in reading it. But there was also an article on the Harvard Business Review recently, which was called "Your Content Strategy is Also a Recruiting Strategy," and it echoed this idea as well. The more that candidates can find out about your company, as told in an authentic voice from real employees, the better aligned they'll be with your company's mission and culture before they even come in for an interview, which is just great for you as a recruiter. Okay, so now that we've talked about what content marketing is and why it's important in a university recruiting context, let's take a look at some specific examples of how employers are using content marketing as part of their recruiting strategy. And this is just a quick reminder that we'll be taking questions through the questions function in GoToWebinar at the end of the presentation. Okay, so the first example I want to talk about is Microsoft. They have this great blog, the Microsoft Jobs blog, and you can access it through their careers page or directly at microsoftjobsblog.com. It's updated every few days, and it features stories about current interns told in their voice. A blog is probably one of the easiest ways to experiment with content marketing. It doesn't require too much technical expertise, and it's not difficult to get interns involved. It has the added benefit of giving your interns something visible to work on and letting the rest of your company know what they're up to. Interns might also be willing to share their guest posts with their friends and their classmates, which can boost visibility. Anecdotally speaking, here at AfterCollege, the posts that have a personal connection to someone in the office do exponentially better than the posts that don't, especially on platforms like Facebook. And you can see here that Microsoft Jobs blog site also links to their social media platforms as well. The next example I want to talk about is Google. It's probably not too surprising that Google excels at content marketing because of their search engine dominance, right? As we talked about earlier, people are going to be, Google is probably most people's first stop when they're looking for information about your company. But Google also owns several platforms that are used to create and share content, right? So they have Blogspot, which is a blogging platform. They have YouTube for video, and they have Google Plus for social media. For the purposes of this presentation, we're going to focus on the video element, the Google Students YouTube channel. And the current playlist is from 2012 to 2013, but I imagine this is because the 2014 internship season has just wrapped up and they're probably in the middle of doing all the post-production and all that kind of thing for the video. The really cool thing about these videos is that they're excellent examples of storytelling. You really get to know each intern who's featured, their journey, and their time at Google as seen through their eyes. In essence, these videos are commercials for Google, but they don't feel that way because the storytelling is so compelling. The key here, and when you make your videos about your company, is that you want to make the interns the primary character, and Google, or in your case, your company, the supporting character in the arc of the story. I wanted to make sure that we looked at an example that featured videos because YouTube is actually the second largest search engine out there. It receives 3 billion searches in a month, which is more than Bing, Yahoo, Ask, and AOL combined. Another benefit of video is that it can easily be repurposed for other visual-dominated social media platforms like Pinterest and Tumblr to reach an even broader audience. And this is just a snippet of an infographic created by Mushroom Networks, just with a few stats about YouTube. Ernst & Young, or EY, is another great example of a company that is using content marketing for their university recruiting. And they've created an entire site to educate potential applicants about the work experience at their company. And the URL is just exceptionaley.com. Go check it out if you have a chance. There's a video at the beginning that appears to be a fictionalized account of one woman's EY journey, but it almost seems like a movie trailer. It's similar to Chipotle's Scarecrow video, if you're familiar with that. Yes, it's a commercial for the brand, but there's a bigger message there. In Chipotle's case, it's about understanding where your food is coming from, and in EY's case, it's about working in a place that supports you throughout your career and helps you succeed. There's also video and written content that answers various questions about specific topics like diversity, flexibility, and community service. And one of my favorite things is the choose your own adventure type game, where you start with your major, you indicate some of your interests and your preferred working environment, and you'll automatically receive a list of job types and fields that best match your interests. I think this is especially useful because it helps students get to the bottom of that pesky question of what do I want to be when I grow up, and they could potentially use the results even outside of EY. And you want to be thinking about that with your content marketing as well, not just how can I help students find a job at my organization, but how can I help them answer that question of what they want to be when they grow up. I just wanted to show you this screenshot of a Google search that I performed recently. So you can see my search terms were, what's it like to work at BP? And the first result is an ad that's sponsored by BP. The second is a Glassdoor ranking, Glassdoor entry about BP. But then every other thing that showed up on the page was from the BP site itself. So this is one of the huge benefits of content marketing. Google gives preference to content that is fresh, frequently updated, and useful. And the way that they measure things that are useful are by answering questions like, do people come to your site and find the answers they're looking for? And Google measures this based on things like how long people stay there and how many other people link to you. According to marketing experts HubSpot, businesses that have blogs get 55% more visitors and 434% more index pages than companies that don't. These are some things that you'll want to keep in mind when making the case for content marketing and also for measuring your success, right? You can continue to look at your search engine results and whether you're moving up in the rankings. Okay, so by now we hope that we've convinced you about the importance of content marketing and why it should be a part of your university recruiting program. But you're probably wondering how you can get started and what you can do with limited resources. This next section will give you a few ideas. The first piece of advice is to start small. don't feel like you need to publish blog posts every day or you need to create an entire series of Oscar-worthy videos. In the employer blog interview that we did with Tracy Parsons, who I quoted earlier, Tracy suggested taking some small steps. And you can you don't necessarily have to do these steps in this order, but this just gives you an idea of some of the small things you can do to get started. So decide what you want to represent to students and recent grads. What is your employer brand all about? Why would students want to work with you? Put together a list of websites or blogs that already put out great content and have a strong readership in your demographic. So just research what else is out there and see what other people are doing. Start sharing the content that you find from other people through your channels. You'll probably identify a few general topics that are related to both the job search and perhaps your industry. Pay attention to which topics get the most interest, which things are people sharing or commenting on. And at this stage, you don't necessarily have to have created anything yourself. This is just sharing content from others. But once you've done that for a while and you have an understanding of what content is resonating with your audience, then you can start to create content on these topics. And maybe you want to start by pitching it to other people, right? So there are tons of bloggers out there who already have a popular following. And so maybe ask them if you can write a guest post. And that's a great way for you to get started. And then you already have the benefit of their built-in audience. So you don't necessarily have to follow this exact plan, but it just gives you an idea of how you can break things down into smaller, more manageable pieces. Another important part of getting started is finding your team, right? How do you find a content team? Well, you don't necessarily need to hire an experienced content marketer, although of course it's great if you can. Look for people who love to read and write. If you're launching a blog or pitching guest posts, you'll want someone who can create a clear voice and style guide for your brand. Anyone with a background in journalism, or even just someone who took a few journalism classes or served on their college paper, is a good candidate. One of the most important parts of good content is its ability to tell a story, and journalists are trained to uncover stories. But in the early stages, the most important quality is just enthusiasm and willingness to learn. A lot of content marketing is about trying new things and learning as you go along. You can also outsource some of your content to guest writers. You may find other people within your company who are interested in writing about their work, career path, or advice to students or recent grads, and I see that a lot of companies do this. They get recruiters to talk about, should you, go for an MBA? How do you decide if you're a good fit for the company culture? There are a lot of topics that there are probably people within your organization who can write about with expertise. You can also reach out to some of the bloggers or thought leaders who write for the same audience and ask them if they'd be willing to write a guest post for you. And then another great option is getting your interns involved. And we talked about this earlier, right, when we talked about the Microsoft Jobs blog. Asking your interns to write about their experiences is a great idea because it helps share their work with your company at large. It gives them something tangible to show for their time at your company. It's great for their resume as well. And it also boosts the likelihood that your content will be shared with your target audience because their friends and classmates are going to be really interested in what they've been doing, during the summer or whatever time they've been spending with you. And you shouldn't feel like you have to create every single piece of content from scratch. Sharing other people's content is a great way to get started. So you can just gather up content from a range of sources and put it together with a little bit of your commentary or perspective. This practice is often referred to as content curation, and it's just an easy way to get started in the content marketing game. Just remember that you want to add something to the conversation. So you can choose a top 5 or a top 10 list, or you can gather up the best resources on the topic that you know that your audience is interested in. And don't forget to tell people that you're linking to them or that you selected them for their list. Some people will really appreciate it and share your posts through their own channels. And I can say that from personal experience. On the AfterCollege employer blog, we've done top 5, top 10 lists of Twitter accounts, Facebook pages, careers pages, and there are a lot of employers that were really excited to be included on our list and were really enthusiastic about sharing that through their own channels. So you can experience the same thing. And another important technique is to remember that when you create something, you don't need to think of it as just a one-off piece of content. you can find multiple ways to share the same research and ideas. So here's one example from here at AfterCollege. We started with the topics of interns and brand, and we created a webinar based on our research and expertise on this subject. We recorded the live webinar, and the recording is now housed on our YouTube page. Then we created a blog post based on the same topic. And finally, we created 3 separate SlideShare presentations based on the webinar. So our original investment in creating the webinar led to 6 separate pieces of content on 6 different platforms, not to mention all of the places that we shared it through social media, Facebook, Twitter, all of those places, our LinkedIn page as well. So as I just mentioned, AfterCollege offers a range of educational content, and we just wanted to give you a quick recap of all the places where you can find us. The AfterCollege Employer blog is updated weekly every Wednesday. We feature interviews with university recruiting industry leaders and offer tips on best practices. Our goal is to help you advance your university recruiting strategy. And some of our recent posts and topics have included an interview with the Director of University Programs at Salesforce, myths about recruiting students with disabilities, and advice on how to measure and build your employer brand among students and recent grads. So you can find the Employer blog at employer.aftercollege.com, and I would strongly encourage you to sign up if you haven't already. We also will be doing more webinars in this University Recruiting Essentials series. So we have Creating a Career Fair Strategy, which is coming up on October 8th. And then we also have Building Brand Recognition with Scholarships coming up on November 5th. And if you visit employer.aftercollege.com/webinars, you can find the full schedule and register. And we would definitely encourage you to attend. And please feel free to invite others who you think might benefit from our content. We also would encourage you to get in touch with us if you have any follow-up questions or points that you would like to ask us about. You can reach Roberto at webinars@aftercollege.com. You can get me at blog@aftercollege.com. And you can find us on Twitter. Our handle is @AfterCollege. On Pinterest, we have one board that's specific for employers. And then we also have the University Recruiters group on LinkedIn. So please feel free to follow us and join us in social media. So we will be opening up the floor to see if anybody has any questions. So if you do, please feel free to type them into the questions box, and we will be trying to take as many as we can before the time is up. Okay, so yeah, just a reminder that we would be willing to answer any questions if you want to just type them in. Okay, so I see we've got okay, so we have a question about the Career Fair Strategy webinar. So this, we've got someone asking if we're going to be covering only campus recruiting, if we'll be talking about best practices for companies that also recruit at professional associations and those type of conferences. And I believe that this particular webinar does focus really on the on-campus recruiting. So yeah, that would be for that particular one. But if you did have any questions about the professional recruiting at a professional association or other conference, feel free to send us an email, and we would be happy to address that. Okay. Okay, someone is asking if we're going to have a recorded version of the webinar. We may have a recorded version of this webinar. We'll definitely be sending a follow-up email to everyone afterwards, and if there's a recording available, we'll send you the link in there. Okay, let's see. Okay, and we have a question about what risk should we consider when developing a social media campaign, and does advertising on social media create an issue with OFCCP? Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Roberto for this one.
All right, I'll answer the OFCCP question. The short answer is we've seen large employers that need to be OFCCP compliant use social media for very creative ways, whether it's putting out contests and then people respond through the same social media channel. So somebody could post a challenge on Twitter and put out a code, and then you have somebody decipher that code. That automatically tells the employer that, you know, if they're looking for crypto analyst folks, in this example, Twitter was a good channel for this. In terms of advertising, I think in general, I think you just need to prove and show that you're advertising to a large swath of the population, that you're being inclusive, I think, and being able to track that. So in my opinion, and I think this is pretty common, social media falls within just any other media for advertising. So as long as you're following the same practices on social media in terms of targeting as you would on any other advertising channel, you're good. And let's see, we got another question here. Do you think recruiting works with marketing for lots of this stuff, or can you take materials to incorporate into staffing? Can you elaborate on the question a little bit, please? If you type it in, we'll do a better job at answering that. I can, and I'll wait for you to type in the question before I give an answer. If not, I'll interpret it to the best of my abilities. All right. Hold on. Yeah, so if you already have marketing expertise in-house, definitely do not recreate the wheel. So leverage any insight you have and basically use that marketing or social media person as a resource, right? So as a staffing team member, you'll have an idea of what you need to accomplish. And from this, you know, what you're getting is that putting out content early on is going to help you sort of cast a wide net and get on people's radar sooner. So by working with the marketing folks or the marketing individual at your company, he or she can help you figure out ideas of what's worth putting out there and how to best do it using social media or any other channel. We've seen, actually, I'll give you another example. So we've seen, it's another technology company, and tech companies are you know, they're typically sort of at the forefront of this, but one thing you can do is take, let's say I'll give you this example. It's kind of a mix between a real example and a hypothetical, because you know, we're seeing a lot of demand for data analytics and machine learning. So let's say you want to start getting on the radar with people who are studying data analytics, right? Let's say math programs. You're not ready to recruit, but you want to start casting that net. So you might ask an individual at that company who's doing some cool work on data analytics to write a brief sort of desensitized outline of what they do, and then you can share that through whether it's social media or, you know, with specific professors from the programs that you might want to target later on. And you can get marketing to help you craft that, working with that individual to create the story and just sort of create this piece that's probably not academic in nature, but that's going to appeal to the faculty or the students that are studying the subject matter that you might eventually recruit for, right? And the same could apply for healthcare, right? Let's say you're looking for nursing new grads, and you have projected headcount maybe a year or two down the line, but you don't have the need right now, right? But what you want to do is you may want to get some stories from some students that did their clinicals with you, or who basically joined as new grads in the past, and they had a great experience as a new grad. So you can do that on your own. If you have a marketing resource, you can work with them to put a blog post or just create a video or a story with that individual about what it was like for them to join your company, either for the clinical or after they graduated and they join your organization, right? So if you have marketing folks to leverage and they have the time, definitely take them out to lunch, buy them a drink, and get them to help you with that. Does this answer the question? I hope it does. If not, let me know. Okay, great. Perfect. Any other questions? Good questions, by the way. Thank you. Actually, yeah, there's more questions. Actually, okay, great. Good comments. Thank you. We'll leave it open for another minute. And actually, if there's no more questions, and if you think of questions later on, you can definitely email us. So webinars is sort of the catch-all email address that I look at, and Melissa and a few other folks here on the team to make sure that I don't miss your emails. But definitely email us, and we'll get back to you if anything else comes up. This is what we do. It's fun stuff. We see a lot of different examples of what companies do to basically recruit on campus and to create content. So we're definitely happy to share what we see whenever we get permission from the organization, and we can always give you best practices of what we see working. All right. So at this point, there's no more questions. We're gonna let you go early. And again, thank you very much for your time. We really enjoy doing these webinars. We are going to send you a survey and ask you what you thought of this webinar and how you can help us make them better and more informative. So we appreciate your feedback. And again, your time is valuable, and we thank you for it. We hope this has been helpful. And like Melissa said, there's more webinars coming. Next one is on career affairs, and another one on scholarships. And anything else you can think of, or a topic that you want. Actually, if there's any topics you want to hear about, we just, one of the questions was about associations, so that's a potential topic. Let us know, and we're happy to put on a webinar to address that that area that you want to know more about. All right? All right, everyone, thank you very much. Good morning for those of you in the West Coast, and have a good day, remainder of your day for all of you sort of in the Midwest and East. And have a good week. Take care, everyone. Bye.